Thanks to Stolen History Forum, we've acquired some interesting information on this topic. According to official history, Triumphal Arches were invented and built by the Romans in honor of great historical events such as victory in major battles, the birth and death of a member of the imperial family, and the founding of new colonies. According to historians, since the time of the Romans, it has become fashionable to erect triumphal arches all over the world in honor of great or uneventful events. Triumphal Arch is a massive building with very stunning scarification. They are scattered around the world and have an almost similar name. They are called arches, portals, gates, and even bridges. For example, the India Gate. Also, the Red Gate in Moscow. The Roman Empire had long since collapsed, but for some reason, the obsession continued throughout the world. They kept building these huge structures that are completely useless from a practical point of view. The Romans had decided 2,000 years ago that if something happened, it was necessary to build these useless huge structures. Also, that's what happened in the United States during the Civil War of 1864. They made sure to build this arch and called it the Arch of Soldiers and Sailors. Let's take a look at this arch. Somehow, in the main center of this arch weren't soldiers and sailors from the Civil War, but some kind of ancient Roman statues. Here, Russia defeated Napoleon in 1812. So it became necessary to build another arch. Let's take a look at this building. It was built in 1834. The arch was erected in honor of Russia's victory over Napoleon. But for some reason, again, in the most important place, there is an ancient Roman sculpture. Generally, we don't understand what this sculptural composition has to do with the Napoleonic Wars. You might think that Napoleon was defeated by the Roman legion. Suppose that this arch was built in honor of the great military. These sculptures should be built according to certain canons, but they were mostly expressed through ancient Roman sculptures. Here is another very interesting construction. This is Hurlbut Memorial Gate in Detroit. This building wasn't intended for any military victories. It was built by order of a former grocer just for beauty's sake in the late 19th century. As we can see, this building was built in the ancient Roman style. I look at this arch and wonder which American grocer had such great artistic taste. We see that these were built all over the world with a very similar design. Historians say they're just ruins, but they are some very strange monuments. This may not be a memorial at all, but some ancient technical facilities. This is a very stunning construction of the 18th century with an interesting name, which is the Seconda Macchina. Historians wondered what a strange name like Secunda Macchina is, and we're still only in the 18th century. Judging by that name, this is a kind of technological device. Historians say it was built to host the annual fireworks in honor of the King of Naples in 1785. They not only organized fireworks, but also launched large balloons. If we look, we see strange ancient Roman construction and sculptures with a very strange title. When we read the phrase Secunda Macchina, the first thing that comes to mind is a time machine. It's a very strange name. I don't believe it was made to hold fireworks in the form of this typical triumphal arch. Also, here is another Secunda machine that is already in China. We see that hundreds of triumphal arches have been built all over the world. Some of them bear names such as gates, doors, or bridges. Some have even been called the Secunda Macchina. Judging by the name and appearance, it looks like some kind of secret portal. It is like a door to another world. These portals are spread all over the world, for example, the Somali Arch. Also here, we can see the Arch of the Emperor Maximilian's words. It's a very fantastic arch. The link to this will be in the description. it can be viewed in detail with very high quality. Here's another awesome arch located in Scotland. This construction was built simply to celebrate the Queen's arrival in 1849. It turns out that in 1844, Queen Victoria visited Scotland, and therefore in 1849, this huge arch was built. Now let's move on to the little-known arches of New York. Firstly, the Victory Arch. Look at this building. Again, we see the ancient Roman style. However, it wasn't built in honor of those who died in the time of the ancient Romans, but in honor of the memory of Americans who died in the First World War. Historians say it's a massive structure built in 1918 of wood and plaster. Look at the photos of this monumental structure. Somehow I can't believe that it was built as a temporary structure made of gypsum and sticks, but most likely an ancient preserved construction. Near this arch, strange rites were carried out. Look at these pyramids built from captured German helmets. Generally, they're like frames of some science fiction movie that looks like reality from another world. These helmet pyramids look very mystical. Also at the top, there's a goddess statue, and this isn't a distant century. This is 1918. The rituals of modern New York are almost the same as ancient Egypt. Secondly, we have the New York Jewel Arch. It was also made of plaster and lathe. There were also stucco pillars that rise to a height of 80 feet. They were covered with thousands of prisms. When lit up by searchlights, the prisms sparkled with rainbow colors. Also, here they put the armor and weapons of the vanquished enemies. This arch was built in 1918. It gives the feeling that they fought with ancient Rome. What does this have to do with the First World War? Now, this is New York in 1899, Madison Square. This arch was built around the same time and was called Dewey Arch in honor of George Dewey's victory over the Spanish at Manila Bay in 1898. Again, we see the ancient Roman style. What do these sculptures have to do with the victory over the Spaniards in 1898? As usual in New York, this arch was also built of wood and plaster. Look at this beautiful building. It looks more like an ancient preserved structure, and somehow it's hard to believe that it was only made temporarily. Here are two other wooden arches built in 1899. Here's the Manhattan Arch, also back in the ancient Roman style. Historians questioned, why did they build arches in honor of military victories and other events necessarily in the Roman style, and decorated them with sculptures from ancient Rome? Some researchers have suggested that triumphal arches are some ancient portals located around the world. These portals seem to still function, where some mysterious rituals were held near them up until recently. If you look at this photograph of the beginning of the 20th century, you get the impression that people were performing some kind of mystical ritual. Here's Eliot Arch that was built for Lincoln's funeral. What kind of mystical ritual was this structure built for? Researchers looked at these arches and couldn't understand what had happened to our history. Why would they perform such rituals? Is it possible that these really are portals located around the world? And if they are, does that mean there are people who know how to operate them?